Over 900,000 children in 3 northeastern states of Nigeria are severely malnourished. That is the latest statistic from the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. At a media briefing in YOLA, ADAMAWA State, a UNICEF nutritionist expert, Dr. BAMIDELE OMOTOLA, described the nutrition situation in YOBE, ADAMAWA and BORNO states as a ticking time bomb. What does this mean for the socio-economic situation in the Northeast in particular and Nigeria in general? How did the nutrition situation become so bad even with the numerous food intervention programs in the region? And how best should the government approach malnutrition eradication in the country to find a lasting solution to the problem? These and more are on our list of issues to discuss on Nigeria Today. My name is DENIS ADEGUNLOYE. Welcome. And seated already in the studio to discuss malnutrition in Nigeria is a representative from the United Nations Children's Fund, Mr. Zakaria Fusheni, who is a nutrition expert in UNICEF. You're welcome to Nigeria Today, sir.
Thank you.
All right, and we also have Dr. Chris Osa Isokpunwu. He is the head of the Nutrition Federal Ministry of Health, Abuja. Thank you also for joining us on Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're both very welcome. Now, before we go into the discussion proper, let's see what our correspondent brought back from his interactions with some Nigerians on the streets speaking on malnutrition and how it affects the country.
Malnutrition is all about not eating the necessary balanced diet, so to say. You know, not having adequate food or adequate fruits to work with the body system in event to have a good lifestyle. You know, so once these components of ingredients of foods are lacking in the body, then one will be termed to be malnourished.
A condition where a person is feeding on a food that doesn't contain the right proportion of diet in it. It's also not eating adequately. It's not just containing the rightful proportion of ingredients, but not eating adequately is also malnutrition.
Most Nigerian children are malnourished because of their eating habits.
There is no diet.
There are no proper diet. Some people, based on carbohydrates, why they have to balance their diet, they just go on carbohydrate. That can cause malnutrition.
You can curb malnutrition by feeding in a right proportion. Let's say, for instance, if you have money that you know that can afford you to go on natural food, there is no point rushing to feed on fast food that their nutritional value is nothing to write home about.
One, they need to be educated. Secondly, they should go for simple foods like beans, all these carrots, cucumber. They are not too expensive, but they should be inculcated into their food. And there should be orientation put on telly to inform Nigerians that it could still be, you can get all those things from cheaper where we neglect. Soya beans, all those things can give us what we want.
Some comments there from members of the public on our topic of discussion today on malnutrition. Let's start with Dr. Chris. You've heard some of the comments from some members of the public there. Would you say Nigerians are well informed on this issue of malnutrition and how it affects health?
Well, generally, I think Nigerians have different opinions about malnutrition, as you can see from the different responses. Many do not really understand what it's all about. Many think that malnutrition is just about inadequate feeding. They don't have enough food, so give them food. Unfortunately, that was until not too long ago. It used to be the approach of policymakers that when there is malnutrition, it's about food and food production and making food available. But we know now that malnutrition goes beyond that. It's not just the availability of food, it's an interplay of food, how the food is utilized in the body, and for the production of adequate health and for the nourishment of the body.
All right, Mr. Zakaria, what are the types of malnutrition that impact on the lives of people, and how does it manifest in particular among children?
Okay, thank you once again for having me. I think as mentioned by Dr. Chris, it starts from the way we situate malnutrition, and it comes in different forms. We can take it on the point of the fact that we have two broader types. We have the one we call undernutrition, when people are not eating the quantity of food that is enough to make their body function properly. So it's just like inadequacy of the diet. And then we have the overnutrition, where you tend to eat the wrong food, perhaps at the wrong time, and then you kind of get beyond what your body is required to function well. So it manifests itself in sometimes obesity and things related to that. So these are the two broader ones. But going beyond that, if you look at developing country, Nigeria and others, we're much concerned about the undernutrition, which is where we have a situation where children are not getting the adequate amount of nutrients in their body to function well. And it manifests itself in what we call the acute malnutrition, where the child is losing weight within the shortest possible time due to, for example, that there is no food for the child to eat. There could be diarrhea and other related activities. And then we have, when it progresses, and then it goes to what we call chronic malnutrition. In other words, we call it stunting, where the body organs and all other parts, including the brain, become, exactly. And it kind of make the child, what we say is too short for the age of the child. And the danger of that one is that it affects the brain, so it affects the educational performance of the child. It also affects productivity at adulthood. It also manifests itself into chronic diseases when you get older. So that is the stunting aspect of malnutrition that we have, which is chronic. That being said, we also have what we call the hidden hunger, which is inadequacy of micronutrients like vitamins, like minerals that we have. They are needed in small quantity, but without it in the body cannot function well. And so we have majority of our children also suffering from micronutrient deficiency that also affect their immune system, their ability to grow well.
All right, Dr. Chris, what would you attribute a lot of what Zakaria said with regards to the causes of the malnutrition? What is it that people are not necessarily doing correctly?
Yeah, I think in analyzing that, we need to look at it in a more systematic way, and that is well elaborated in a framework as to what are the causes of malnutrition. So you could talk about the basic causes, the immediate, and then the underlying causes. Rather the other way around, immediate causes, basic causes, and then underlying causes in between. And that is, again, you can further classify the fact that there are the causes as a result that are inherent in the individual and in the household, then the one within the community, and then the one in the broader society. So the one that most of us are often concerned about is the one within the individual himself. So, and that is, they are basically about inadequate dietary intake, as well as perhaps ill health or health conditions. If a child, and I would like to focus more on children because that's the one that they're talking about.
One of the most vulnerable groups anyway.
Exactly. If a child is sick, his nutritional needs increases, and if it's prolonged and he's not eating well, because there's usually loss of appetite, that also brings about the fact that the child is not having inadequate intake, can result in malnutrition. And those are the immediate causes. But the underlying causes are, one, the immediate causes, and then the underlying causes in between. And that is, again, you can further classify the fact that there are the causes as a result that are inherent in the individual and in the household, then the one within the community, and then the one in the broader society. So the underlying causes are causes that are as a result of maybe dietary, there is health, and then there is the care. So that's the link between food and health now. So when there is not enough food, of course, there will be malnutrition, of course. Then what of care? If the mother does not know how to care for the child, for example, the basic care that we're talking about is breastfeeding and exclusive breastfeeding. She has to initiate breastfeeding immediately from birth. If she doesn't know that, she doesn't know that this child needs to be taken to hospital for immunization. She doesn't know that she has to take the child to the hospital to monitor his growth. That's care. Then there's the other part, environment and health. That's the aspect of water, sanitation. If the child does not have access to adequate water and sanitation, that is at the underlying causes. The basic are those that are operational in the society. How does the society support the child to have adequate nutrition? Are there health facilities available? Is there are there infrastructure? Is there any poverty alleviation plans on ground? Is the society really primed to provide support? Are there structures on ground to provide support? So these are the different strata that we would look at that broadly will contribute to the nutrition of a child.
All right, so Zachary, what in my opening intro, we referred to states in the north, ADAMAWA, YOBE and BORNO. How can governments curb the seriousness of this malnutrition issue, particularly in those states and other states, from escalating? Given the fact that a lot of intervention programs have been initiated, but very little progress seems to have been made with regards to addressing malnutrition. So what would you say is the way forward?
Yes, the way forward, I think, will start from a multi-sectoral approach to addressing the issue of malnutrition in North-East, especially when Dr. Chris was mentioning, he talked about basic causes, underlying causes, and immediate causes. I think the immediate one that we need to do is to make sure that we prevent malnutrition from happening. How do we prevent malnutrition from happening? We need to make sure that we support mothers to be able to exclusively breastfeed their children within the first 6 months of life. That is very critical to make sure that children start up early. And then continuing from that, we need to make sure that they eat adequately. I was listening to some of the soundbite and people talking about people not eating well. And for children, we need to make sure that immediately after 6 months, they start feeding foods, what we call complementary food, that are adaptable to their situation, and continuing with breastfeeding at the same time. So that is one way of preventing it. So the other way is, how do we make sure that we educate the communities, we educate the mothers to make sure that children and then the environments are very hygienic to prevent diarrhea from happening, and also making sure that there is availability of food at all times. The children are fed on demand. Now, that is the preventive aspect. What if it feels like what is happening in North-East, where we have majority of the children already being malnourished? The only way for us is to prevent them from dying, and that is what we call the treatment aspect, which is more expensive than the prevention. But what we do, and what government need to also do, is for us to invest more into making sure that we have the needed supplies, medical commodities that are available for children. And when we're talking about medical commodities, when it comes to nutrition, we're talking of what we call ready-to-use therapeutic food, which is RUTF, that is needed to make sure that a severe malnourished child is treated within the shortest possible time. Within days, the child can come back to normal, and then it's continue with the prevention aspect. So these are the two ways that we need to do it. And then how do we also make sure that policies are in place to prevent mothers from having difficulty in accessing food? And that is why the issue of the food you mentioned about, there could be availability of food, but perhaps household do not have access to that food. So once the food is available, they have access to it, they can be able to feed their children. But of course also there's a lot of response to the North-East. How do we make sure that in each of the response, in each sector, there is an integration of nutrition component to it? The food security aspect, agriculture, how do we make sure that we not only interested in food that are going to be sold or exported, but food that are available to be eaten at the household level. The water and sanitation sector, how do we make sure that mothers and communities who need the services, they get access to water to prevent that? So these are the ways we can work together to kind of prevent the scourge of malnutrition in Northeast, and which we have been doing in partnership with the government and then our major donors to make sure it happens.
All right. Well, we'll continue our discussion shortly, but you are watching Nigeria Today, and we are looking at malnutrition and its devastating effect on the lives of Nigerians, and in particular children under 5 in Nigeria. We'll be right back after this short break.
The Nigerian Television Authority News 24 channel, your dependable all-round news station, offering you world-class news programs, documentaries, spotlights, promos and information highlights. Take advantage of our network reach and advertise your interest, goods and services with us. NTA News 24, first among equals with digital broadcasting. You can reach us on channel 21 terrestrial TV and channel 101 on the Star Times platform. For more inquiries, please call Henry on 0803 379 0884. Join us today.
The program is Nigeria Today, and we are back in the studio with Dr. Chris Osa Isokpunwu, Head of Nutrition at the Federal Ministry of Health, and Zakaria Fusheni, a nutrition specialist from UNICEF. So we've talked extensively about causes, preventive measures, and all the rest of it concerning malnutrition. Let me come to Dr. Chris. The UNICEF, it turns out malnutrition in Nigeria is not only prevalent in the Northeast, but UNICEF reports shows that 1 in 7 children suffer from acute malnutrition in 9 northern states, while 1 in 77 children are affected in the remaining parts of the country. What would you say is the best approach that governments can adopt to, reducing these figures?
Well, it's a national approach because the recent data have shown that efforts in the north is paying off. The recent 2018 data has shown that malnutrition has reduced in the northwest from about 54% to 50%, okay. And in the northeast it's now about 42%. Fortunately, it appears to be getting worse in the south, southeast and southwest. So while we are getting improvement in the north, we are getting some deterioration in the southern part. And so you'll find that when that happens, overall, we've not made much progress. So we do a national approach, and basically the most important thing we see here is not exactly the absence of food, but it's the knowledge of how to feed our children. The situation is still a lot better in the north, in the southeast, for example, where stunting rate is 17%, where we are talking about 50% in the northwest. And government is taking that on. Of course, all along, government have been working with partners like UNICEF and the others to ensure that we address issues of malnutrition, all round issues, not just children, even among the Nigerian elite. And there are different policies in place. Let's start with the hidden hunger, for example. You know that twice a year children are given vitamin A supplements. We have iodine in salt that is consumed in this country, and I can tell you that about 91% of salt consumed in this country has iodine in it. We ensure that flour, vegetable oil, and sugar has vitamin A. The flour has iron and folic acid, yeah. and so that's for micronutrient supplement, micronutrient deficiency control. For stunting, it's the same. We are addressing it with all around efforts. And then for severe acute malnutrition, those children that are already sick, we're working with UNICEF to ensure that treatment is ongoing. Government is investing in treating these children and not just leaving it to partners. The Federal Ministry of Health, the federal government of Nigeria have made some money available to procure the RUTF, supported by UNICEF, to ensure that children are treated. And you know that from the results, in the last 2 years, we've treated over 1 million children, and many more are going to be treated, not just in the northeast, northwest. We are opening up treatment centers in at least 6 more states in the other parts of the country, just to make sure that we have a national approach to it. But the most important approach will be behavior change communication, where we have to constantly let people know about how to feed the children right. It's about feeding right. It's not necessarily about food. By the way, how big is the stomach of a 5-year-old? And so how much food does he really need? So it's not about no money for food. And in fact, survey that was conducted about not so long ago showed that people really didn't say their problem was that of food. But so it was more of, how do you feed the children? And the data also show that mothers who are not educated, their children are more likely to be malnourished. Mothers who are in the rural areas, who do not have access to basic amenities, have the chances of being malnourished. So the most important thing, therefore, is behavior change communication. If a mother would just understand that not giving a baby water in the first 6 months of life, that from birth to when the child is 6 months, can save the child, can save 20% of the children who die in infancy. If they know that, you see that we would already be on the right track. And then, what kind of food do you feed your children? Mothers need to know that it doesn't have to be expensive food. And you don't have to be rich to give your children adequate nutrition.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Zachary here. Well, a crucial point has been made with regards to behavioral change and attitudes. Just give us your take on how critical it is for parents in particular to educate themselves and be open to sensitization as to the correct practices with regards to proper and adequate feeding of their children, particularly those under 5.
Yes, to the extent that the nutritional status of a child is determined much at the household level. We are even looking at it from the broader society, national level. So the right start from home. It starts from the mother. It starts from the parents, from the household, from all those supporting it. So if you consider that, we cannot underscore the importance of the knowledge of parents on that. And it's critical also because if you look at exclusive breastfeeding, Dr. Chris was mentioning about the statistics is not looking good for Nigeria. So we need to do more in terms of making sure that more children are born within an hour. The children get the breast milk, and then they continue only with breast milk for the first 6 months. And that can be done when parents and mothers are aware of the importance of it and stop giving water. We also did a study that shows that if we're able to just eliminate the water, giving water to children, then we can increase the number of children who are exclusive breastfeed by 70%. And that will mean that many children will benefit from the importance of exclusive breastfeeding, from all the nutrients that come with it. So it is very critical for us to ensure that parents are well educated. But then, it goes beyond just the household. How do we use all the medium that we have, including your station, which we're doing today, to kind of disseminate some of the messages, the importance of nutrition at the household level to parents, but also involving issues around policy. How do we make sure that parents, mothers are protected, especially for those who are working mothers? They have the time that they are needed to breastfeed their children as and when it is necessary.
All right. Well, it's an issue that requires the general collaboration of all concerned parents, the governments, NGOs, and like yourself, UNICEF, and of course the medical profession. And we hope that in the not too distant future, this issue of malnutrition will be something that will be minimized to a level which can be acceptable in the country. Well, that is it on today's edition of Nigeria Today. Let's first of all thank our guest, Dr. Chris Osa Isokpunu, who is the head of nutrition at the Federal Ministry of Health. We appreciate your contributions and insights on this topic, sir.
Thank you very much.
And also, we thank Zakaria Fusheni, who is a nutrition expert from UNICEF. Thanks once again for your insightful contributions to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we thank you to our viewer for your time. And remember, you can watch this edition or any other online at www.youtube.com/NTNews24hub. Well, that's it for today. We thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening.